Good morning, Judy Daley.
Good morning, Francesca.
Thank you for taking the time to join me here on my channel of hope and inspiration. Judy, our conversation today is about culture days as well as the cultural center. We spoke recently about the cultural center, and it was so well received, all the information you gave us. We're going to touch on that again a little bit later on. But right now, let's focus on culture days. This year, I was asked to participate in culture days. So I'm going to be doing a series of short interviews with various artists. But I am going to be starting with you, which is what brings us together again. So, Judy, tell us about culture days. Tell us, how many years have you been participating in this event? Tell us, who is this event for? And anything else that you want to bring to the table.
Okay, so Culture Days is a national forum of cultural events across the country. Traditionally, it has taken place the last weekend of September. Usually it's the Friday, Saturday, Sunday of the last weekend of September. Okay. And this year, because acknowledging the constraints that COVID is going to have for those organizing cultural activities and getting public participation, the thought is that the direction for this year Culture Days will be many more virtual types of events. So they decided to expand the window for Culture Days, is running from September 25th to October 25th. So it's a month-long series of activities, and a number of them will be virtual, so people can participate in online lessons, hear lectures, etc. Things that really enhance our appreciation and understanding about all varieties of culture in our country. So it's visual arts, performing arts, really the whole spectrum of cultural types of activities. So for us, now we've been involved for the past few years in organizing events and activities, generally, as I said, for the Culture Days weekend. And this year we will be offering activities and events throughout the month. As we've done it for a couple of years, we've really seen attendance and interest in our events and activities grow. Just some statistics that we had in 2018, and keep in mind this was over the course of a weekend, 1,900 participants in various activities. So they ranged from, taking part in a dance class, helping to conduct a symphony, music appreciation, the local pipe band playing, events at the art gallery too, demonstrations, Doors Open, which is also kind of held in conjunction with this, and that's where the public gets to tour buildings, public buildings, sometimes residential homes, to get a behind-the-scenes look at the homes, the architecture, etc. So that's also tied in the Doors Open event as well. But last year, so in 2019, our attendance exceeded 2,700 people. So there was a pretty significant jump there. And we had 42 different organizers of activities. And that was a really broad spectrum of people. It included also some organizations of like multicultural organizations, Chinese Canadian Association, presentations that were done by groups, organizations for Indigenous peoples. So we're really trying to kind of expand and be more diverse in that regard as to who we connect with. Involved a lot of artists and many different venues, 25 different venues throughout the town of Halton Hills, and also provided a great opportunity for people to get involved by volunteering. So it really is just promoting all around interest and support for, as I said, all aspects of culture, not just the visual arts.
Right. And the theme you had mentioned, the theme this year is?
Theme is unexpected intersections. So each year there is a theme that is connected to Culture Days. And organizations can kind of, interpret that in their own way and work with that as a theme. We have a few things happening at the cultural center that are actual physical events. We're being very mindful because of COVID that we have all safety measures in place. Visitors to the building are screened when they enter the building. We practice social distancing, obviously, and we require the public to wear masks. So we want to be able to present events and activities that the public will feel safe in attending. And those are in addition to virtual events and activities. But some of the things that we're offering through the gallery will be artist demonstrations. One is with Ingrid Merhofer, whom you're interviewing as part of this series. And she will do a printmaking demonstration. We also have a couple of music events taking place in the John Elliott Theater, also in the Helson Gallery as well, like local musicians. And as you know, performing artists have been really hard hit by the pandemic. So this is kind of a way to reach out to them and to give them a forum, to practice their art. So, we're hoping that the public will feel comfortable in attending events as well as participating in the activities online.
Right. It sounds like there is some great stuff coming up, and a way for, I think, people to get up close and personal with their interactions with the artists, but in different ways this year, as we're doing some of the things are being done online. But I would imagine you're keeping the size of groups to a minimum,
yes,
like limiting the group sizes.
Absolutely.
In-person gatherings. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So for example, with Ingrid's little printmaking workshop and demonstration, so it would only be a certain number of people at a time who can do it. And you can kind of, like, people will, I think they'll pre-register for the event. I'm not certain about that, but just so we can be sure that we're compliant with safety practices.
Okay. Okay. And in my research on Culture Days, it's my understanding that it was initiated by the Canadian Arts Summit in 2010. So it's certainly been around for a while, and I believe it's just gaining in interest with people, with attendance. As you said, it's a national celebration of arts and culture. I know it's attended, just looking at the stats online, by millions of people across Canada. And this year, I think it's pretty amazing that it's gone from being a weekend thing to 4 weeks, running from September 25 to October 25.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that is it in a nutshell, I think, for Culture Days. And thank you for sharing that information. And Judy, I had such positive feedback from our last interview, with people wanting to hear more about the history of the Cultural Center. So I'm wondering if you can share some of those stories again and tell us what your role is with the Cultural Center, okay, Judy.
Right. So I think the story of the Cultural Center really begins with the gallery, because that building is a historic church that was built in 1878. It served the community until the early 1900s. And at that point, it was the Congregational Church, and that became absorbed into the United Church of Canada. So the church was no longer needed in the community, and it was deeded to it was the former town of Georgetown, with the understanding that it would become a public library. And so for many years, it served the public in that capacity. And then in the 1960s, they started to have some expansions onto it, and then a significant expansion and renovation in the early 1980s. And at that point, the cultural center component of it was added. There was a theater added to the facility. The library expanded, and then the original church building that was holding the library became an art gallery. And so it was operated in that capacity until I think 2010, 2011, at which point the facility closed, and it underwent a major renovation at that point. And so there was an expansion to the whole front entrance of the building. It was made fully accessible for people visiting. There have been issues previously with accessibility. So all those improvements were made. And then at that point, coincidentally, a donation was offered from Mr. Fred Helson, who was a longtime member of the community and a lawyer who had his practice in the community for many decades. He made this offer of a donation of 103 works of art from his private collection.
Wow.
And these are very significant Canadian artists as well as European artists. And so at that time, in recognition of Mr. Helson's gift, the town rebranded the gallery. It became the Helson Gallery, and it officially opened to the public in March of 2013. And because of Mr. Helson's gift at that point, it was also necessary to hire a curator who would have oversight for the collection, make sure it was properly cared for and exhibited. And that's where I came in. So I came on board in April of 2013.
April 2013. I'm just curious, Judy, the artwork behind you, would that be one of his?
Yes, absolutely. So this is one of the British artists in the collection.
Okay.
And this is, the artist's last name is Percy, and this is a scene in Wales. So this would be a late 19th century painting. You really can't get an idea from what you see behind me. This painting is huge, like it's about 5 feet in length. So it is the biggest piece in the collection.
It's absolutely stunning from
what
it's
very beautiful. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So I've been to the Cultural Center, and it really is beautiful for so many reasons. It's just the way the whole thing has come together, but it is also on 2 levels, and it's also shared with the library, right?
Yeah.
And so tell me what makes your Cultural Center then different from others, and for people looking to exhibit at your location.
So in terms of exhibition, how we're different is we actually have 2 spaces for artists. And one area is the lobby of the Cultural Center. So there is very large area outside the theater and outside the library that is used to exhibit art on both levels. So as you come in, the main level and then an upper level of the lobby. So this is a very high traffic area because people are using, like walking through this area to access the library, to go to the theater. When the theater has a performance at intermission, people would be mingling in this area and having a chance to see the art. So it is a great location for display of art. And those exhibitions change probably about every 4 to 6 weeks. We change them up a little more often in that space. And we coordinate exhibitions of local artists, arts organizations, also local craft organizations, and also sometimes bringing in regional artists. And as you and I know, working with the HBHAS, I guess the first 2 years, the exhibitions were held in that lobby space during the summer in 2017, 2018. So our other space is in the gallery, and that's about a 1,000 square foot space. So that is inside that original historic church building that I described. Those exhibitions change less frequently, largely because they're the focus of our education programs. We do school programs throughout the school year. And so we like to have an exhibition that has kind of a longer duration. Some of those exhibitions last as much as 2 to 3 months. So the turnover is about 5 to 6 exhibitions per year, as opposed to the lobby, which has sometimes as much 8 to 10 exhibitions throughout the year. So that's kind of a big difference in our space. And I think in terms of the audience that we draw, because it's a cultural center, you have people who are coming to the facility because perhaps they want to use the library, they're there to see a theater performance, and yet then they also are able to interact with art. Like they realize that, oh, there's art on the walls of the lobby, there's a gallery space. So I find in that way we're very public facing and a good community focus, because we are seeing members of the community who are there not necessarily to see specifically the art gallery, but it means I think we draw a kind of wider audience as well for our exhibitions.
Well, you certainly do have a lot to offer, and I can't encourage people enough to go out and visit the Cultural Center. And we should mention where you're actually located. I don't think we mentioned that last
Oh,
time.
yeah. So we are in downtown Georgetown on Church
Right.
Street, 9 Church Street.
Now,
And there is free parking available across the street in the surrounding neighborhood. And the gallery is free. There is no charge to visit the gallery.
and so when you're planning a display, Judy, what are the tasks that you handle? Because you're also, I'm sure, working with assistants.
Yes, yeah. So in some cases, like curating an exhibition, if we would feel that we needed to look outside for the expertise in a certain area, so we would bring someone in as a sort of to curate an exhibition, and that would certainly be in the case of working with you, Francesca, you know, because you had the connections with the artists and were able to bring that expertise to us. So we do on occasion work with someone who is an outside curator, but otherwise curating in-house really means that you're involved in all stages of planning the exhibition, you know, in terms of the timing, even when in the calendar year is it going to take place, what might it connect with in terms of events or other things that are going to be happening at that time, and researching, pulling all that material together to kind of create the theme. And as you mentioned, there is a gallery assistant curator, Cara Bruce, and she helps enormously with coordinating the exhibitions, working with the artists to coordinate, to install the artwork, etc. So we do that together. I'm pretty hands-on as a curator in that regard, to want to see it through from all the initial planning and research into the installation in the gallery. The other important thing is planning the programming around an exhibition. And I mentioned our school programs, so often I'm curating with things like that in mind, so that we would have an exhibition that will speak to points of the curriculum for students if we're going to hold it during the calendar school year.
You certainly do get involved in many different areas, many different aspects. There is so much more going on behind the scenes to pull all of these different shows and events together, and you do an amazing job. So I am curious, and I did ask you this before, and I'm wondering if your answer is going to be the same today, but what has been the most successful display at the gallery?
Right. So I did think about that. And I think, like most people, as we discussed before, I think people would measure success in terms of how many visitors do you get to an exhibition. So in that case, I do think it would still be the exhibition that I had mentioned that involved the Canadian Watercolor Society and the French Watercolor Society.
Okay.
Because that drew it, yeah, a big audience, and also because there were so many artists participating in it, and that generally means like more artists, you're going to get more people who come out and attend the show. But I think that was great because, you know, we were able to say this is an international exhibition. So,
Right.
you know, there was really some prestige in being able to do that, and also to work with a national organization like the Canadian Society of Painters and Watercolor. So yeah, I think that would still stand as a highlight.
Is there any fundraising or special cultural projects that you're planning right now for next year?
So we're keeping plans fluid as we have to be, but and there is a need to reschedule certain exhibitions that were canceled over the last 6 months. So a big one there is an exhibition of Canadian Impressionism, and it was originally planned to be for this fall. I'm hoping that we will be able to go forward with that for next spring. And that will borrow from a lot of private collections. So this will be work that the public has not seen. We will make use of our Helson collection to some extent, but by and large, it will come from private collectors. So I think it'll be a very interesting show, and it has great potential for school programs. We're hoping we're going to be in a different situation as far as that goes come next spring, but.
Right. That sounds really, really exciting. And you said for the spring.
Yes, yeah.
2021.
Yeah.
And COVID has changed the way we travel, the way we take in museums and galleries, including cultural days. So how have you kept the community engaged through this pandemic?
Yeah, so, I can't say that it's not been a challenge. And, early on, I looked at a lot of what other galleries and museums were doing. And of course, you're competing with places like the Louvre in Paris that have amazing collections and can put their collections online. And,
Okay.
obviously we just don't have that same kind of resource, but
Right.
we still attempted to do that. We had a series called the Virtual Vault. So the idea is we're opening up our storage vaults and sharing through social media examples of artwork from the collection. And those were very popular. So just a short, like an image and a short post about the work or the artist. And so we had good feedback on that.
Mm-hmm.
We also did, because school programs were, our school audience, we were missing in a big way back in the spring. We had a special exhibition that had been developed for school programs, and unfortunately all that was canceled, but we did offer a series of online programs or lesson plans for teachers to access. And over the course of the summer, the Town of Halton Hills Recreation and Parks Department does summer camp, and of course that was virtual this year. But we were able to contribute to the art component in 10 weeks of summer camp. So that was good. That meant that the camps had a great creative aspect to them. And so that was also creating lessons that the kids could access online and make fun projects. So those are some of the things that we did. And then very cautiously now we are looking at, we are opening on September 23rd, an actual exhibition in the art gallery. So that will be the first time our exhibition has changed over since back in March. And it's an exhibition of the work of local artists, but we're also reaching out to all types of creative people. So it was not just restricted to visual arts.
Okay.
We put a call out for people who are writers, perhaps, writing poetry or something, creative writing or journaling, also people who do crafts, etc., as well as visual arts. So that exhibition is called Creative Outlets. And the idea is that for many people, they were able to continue being creative, engaging creatively during the pandemic. So we're asking them to submit something that they had done during the last 6 months. So that is our new exhibition that's opening on September 23rd. And
September 23rd. Okay.
I'm glad we've been able to do that. I mean, there was thought some months and weeks back that maybe that was really only going to be a virtual exhibition. But again, as I said, with caution and making sure we're observing best practices for safety, we're actually quarantining the art before we install it. We're asking artists to bring the art in extra early so that we can allow it to undergo a quarantine period before we physically handle and install it. So just trying to make sure that, as I said, we follow best practices, and it'll be interesting to see. I think there's appetite for people to want to participate now. Like there's been a great response to the call to artists and creatives. So I think there it is showing that people do want to, if they feel that something is safe, that they want to participate.
I couldn't agree more. I think people still have the desire. They want to get out. They do want to connect with others, even if they have to social distance. I just think they're ready after the last few months of really having to, self-isolate or pretty much be fairly isolated within their own bubble space. But what have you and the gallery, what have you learned from the crisis that has actually been positive?
Well, I think just the extent to which you can adapt to something is really a positive. I think when everything started back in March, I was maybe like a lot of people in a bit of denial about it. I thought, oh, well, this won't last long. Like, I understood the reasons for it, and I totally got that, but I just thought, oh, sure, like maybe this will only be a matter of weeks or a few months, and never really anticipating just how long it was going to be. So I think there was certainly the need to become flexible and adapt to the new reality and the new working reality. What I've been so impressed about in terms of my role here at the town of Halton Hills and working with members of the cultural services team is how we've really been able to interact and work together as a team, even though have been working from home by and large. And that's been very helpful because it makes you feel less isolated, right? Like I think
For
it's
sure.
quite easy to feel that if you're just day in and day out in your little home office, you can get that sense of isolation. So it's been very helpful and to have like it's the Zoom meeting platform that the employees are using, and that's been great. And being flexible, adapting to that, and then being able to accomplish the things
Right.
in some respects it's had to be more flexible in terms of, as I said, doing real school programs to develop online school programs, but it just shows you what you can do.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more, Judy. And you and I have actually built a relationship over the past 4 years now, I think. And it's been through the Halton Black History Awareness Society. And my role with the society has pretty much been to manage and develop their art exhibits for the August 1st Emancipation Day event. Our theme being what freedom means to you for our artists of color. And we bring in local artists and some of those that are coming from a little further afield to participate and bring awareness, to share their stories in community about their work. And it's been a tremendous opportunity for them, as well as working with yourself. And the exhibits just keep getting better year after year. It was especially nice for us to have the mayor visit one particular summer, as well as it was Arif Viriani, if I'm saying his name correctly, who is the parliamentary secretary to the Minister of Multiculturalism that came in 2018. So we've had tremendous success with our exhibits, and working with you has really been something that we're very, very grateful for. And it wasn't just 1 year, but it was being asked to come back year after year. So thank you.
Francesca, it's been such a highlight for me, and getting to work with you, getting to meet the artists, and some artists coming back over the past few years. But I love the idea that you're bringing new artists in, that you've also brought in artists who are at all different levels of their career. So seeing some that are younger and emerging artists, and that just creates such a great mix. And I think we love that idea that you're bringing us new artists, introducing us to younger artists, and to our audience getting a chance to get to know these artists. So we're looking forward to 2021.
Well, we missed being with you this summer, but we're as well looking forward to next summer. And I'm just having the greatest time finding more artists to be a part of our exhibit. So I think next year is going to be pretty special. So fingers crossed that we can come out of the pandemic and sort of get back to whatever will be our new normal. And I have one more question for you, Judy. As a curator for the gallery and working in the cultural center in Halton Hills, I want to know, because I didn't ask you this last time, but I want to know, we all want to know, what inspires you to collect, to promote, to facilitate the art and the cultural events?
Well, I think it's just really at the heart of me professionally, and in terms of what my education is. Like I studied to be an artist, like from a very young person. It was kind of my goal. And so I actually trained in studio practice. I did have some background in art history, but I did not train to be a curator. I aspired to train to be an artist. And So I started out, actually, once I had graduated, I was working in a number of different jobs, but one of them was teaching art. And so I was teaching through continuing education for the boards of education. I taught for recreation parks in Mississauga, and that's when I first started to teach children, and then started working for the Peel Art Gallery in Brampton, but initially doing their art programs for kids. And so I kind of, I came at it through a different sort of route, but I always felt that my strong connection was because I understood the practice of artists, because that is what I had been trained in. And so I had an interest in the real how and why somebody makes a work of art, like what inspires an artist to create, because that was very close to me personally. So I kind of think that's where my passion for it comes from. And I also love interpreting art for people, and helping to guide how someone understands and learns to appreciate a work of art. So that's been very important to me. And as I said, that kind of goes back to even early on working with young kids and teaching them about art, not just how to make it, but how to read and understand a work of art. So that's a big part of what we do with our school programs. And, I feel very positive about that.
Well, Judy, I just learned something about you today. I did not know. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that about yourself. And I invite anybody who's listening today, if you are able to get down to visit, to be a part of the Culture Days events, to get out there and meet that amazing Judy Daley, who we now know, not only a curator, but an artist. Judy, thank you so much for your time again today. I really appreciate it. And if our listeners would like to connect with you, how can they get in touch with you?
So probably the easiest is by email, and that is judy@haltonhills.ca. I look forward to hearing from people. Yeah, I'd love to.
Perfect. And if you've enjoyed our conversation today, just to our listeners, remember to like and share this video. Again, Judy, thank you for your time today. I really look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you, Francesca.
Soon.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Yes. Until next time, bye for now.
Bye-bye.